All right, you guys. So let's do a little conversation about collage. When I asked for any requests, a lot of people mentioned collage. In fact, it was probably one of the most mentioned things. So what people struggle with in one of the things people struggle with in collage is overdoing, for sure. It's that whole knowing when to stop idea. Placement, sometimes you've got all these elements and you're not sure where they go. Yeah, knowing what works together, that's hard. Placement's hard. Keeping white space and having a flow is another challenge. White space, I'm going to dedicate a whole demo on white space. I love it that much. White space is, I think it's one of my signatures. I went back and looked at some of my early work, and what it has in common with current work is white space. I still love it. I'm still drawn to things that have that visual rest. I know, Kathy, I was thinking about Newfoundland the other day when I got to come and be with you on a sailboat near Miami. Oh my gosh, can I come? Can I come and bring my scuba gear? Don't know what will work together. All right, awesome. Composition. Okay. You've never scrapbooked, so you don't know how to put it together. That makes sense. All right, you guys. So let's delve into collage and answer some of those concerns if I can. And like everything, collage is something that takes practice. It's also something that helps if you use a reference. All right, so all of the concerns that you've mentioned about placement, composition, what to use, what works, what doesn't work are very common. And I'm going to begin with a couple of book recommendations. So this is called Masters. This is a series. You can get Masters of Art Quilting. I think I have that one. Masters of all different kinds of genres of art. And then this one happens to be collage. I bought it a long time ago. I wouldn't be surprised if you can't find it on used, like if you go to the bookstores and look for used. But anyway, what's fun about this is it's collage, all different styles and kinds. And so it'll help you fine tune, like here's my idol, Lynn Perella. It'll help you fine tune what style is most you. So this appeals to me because of the that's Brandy Strickland. Because of the large degree of white space, this does not appeal to me quite as much. But they're both awesome. They're, it's again just like the amount of clutter you can stand in your house is going to determine the amount of collage that you and the style of collage that you like. I will say that I think the number one thing that happens with mixed media collage is overdoing. And I think that's true in general with mixed media of all kinds. With painting backgrounds, with gloss sprays, you take it one step too far. We do tend to overdo. So it is really good practice for you guys to take photos of your art as you go along. And then if you overdo it, you can actually trace back in your photo where you still liked it. And even though I joke, oh, don't like, blah, 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 there's a million ways to overdo. There is a point when you think, oh, shouldn't have done that. If you take photos as you go along, you can identify that point. And I think that's really helpful. The other book that I'm going to recommend is called If You Can Cut, You Can Collage. So Holly Chastain is one of my favorite collage artists. If you go to Pinterest and you put her name in to the Pinterest board, Holly, Hollie Chastain, really a lot of her work will come up. Her work draws me in because it's so simple, yet it has a very strong narrative. And being the English major book lover that I am, there's just something to me about a piece with a story. And I love a strong narrative in work, a strong story. And I always tease my classes that I'm like, okay, it's time now to write an essay about your artwork. And people are like, oh my gosh. See, I missed my calling. I should have been an English teacher, right? But anyway, if you're a Holly Chastain fan, you can totally get some inspiration from that book as well. So here's what I'm going to work with today. I'm just going to work on tags. If I wanted to work in my journal, I sure could. If you have loose watercolor paper, cardstock, paper from the printer, whatever you want to work with as your substrate is fine. And then I'm going to have a pile of stuff. So I have my boxes full of half-done art materials. If you feel like, well, I don't have anything to collage with, you probably have junk mail. You probably have magazines. All of those things are great for collage. Old books, ephemera. I mean, eventually all of us can be collectors to the point that we've become hoarders. So I always used to say I keep one little cubby of ephemera, like vintage ephemera, and I keep one cubby full of painted art materials. Well, I've now outed myself that we now know I have more than one cubby and almost my entire studio floor. So I need to rein that in. But basically anything around you is fair game. Okay. And if you have the Collage Collectives, this is Collage Collective Volume 2. We made this book into two different, we split it in two. So you get different prints in each book in the second version just to lower the price point, just so that you guys, if you don't want to spend $20, you can spend half that and get some awesome collage paper, because we've learned a little bit goes a really long way for this collage paper. And remember, these Collage Collective books are for you to cut up and slice up and use in collage, and you don't just stroke them. So, some of them you're happy to cut up because you're like, okay, that is a hot mess. And some you might not want to. Well, first thing I make people do in class with the Collage Collective is I make them do this. Make them tear out every single page, okay? So as you guys, if you get Collage Collectives or old scrapbook paper or a magazine, rip it all up. Rip it up before you even begin. And then that way you'll find it's a lot easier to use, I think. It doesn't seem so precious when it's not in book form. So in my mind, collage, the building of a collage is very similar to the building of a piece of art that you would do with paint. Oh, you guys, a little art history quiz. Does anybody know the name of one of the artists who legitimized collage as a fine art medium and not just a school kid medium? So I'll throw that out there and then I'll keep talking. So you need to think of building a collage just like you're building a piece with acrylic paint. And the difference is just the medium. So if you're going to collage, you're going to use paint as your medium. You're going to paint with paint or paint with paper. That is what Matisse did, right? So Matisse did legitimize it, but there's somebody before Matisse. There's somebody who was collaging before Matisse. Picasso. It's Pablo Picasso legitimized collage because he was one of the first artists early on that was collaging, and it kind of came out of his Cubist phase. It also came out because he was poor. So if you go to the Picasso Museum in Barcelona, what is so interesting is they have a lot of his work. He was classically trained, so he could paint like, the classical artists. But you've got early work of his, and some of that early work is on cardboard as a substrate because he did not have money for canvases. And he used what he had. And I'm not sure if that's how the collage was born, but it did start there. Matisse came not long after, and maybe even came up with painting or ideas at the time. But Matisse did start as a painter. So Matisse turned to collage as his eyesight failed. And he was collaging a bit, but really turned to collage wholeheartedly when he was started to go blind. In fact, his later collages were directed by him, but not made by his hands because he was too blind. He would have his studio assistants make the collage. Michael DeMang, hey, awesome. So let us play around a little bit with collage. So if you're going to build collage, a piece, you need to think in terms of background. You need to think in terms of of focal point and where you want the eye to go. And then you need to think in terms of supporting elements. And because I like white space, I generally will start a background, and you can start with any medium that you want and then collage on top of it. I will start a background and leave white space. White space for me, this is art gospel according to Dina, white space to me leaves visual room for what's coming next. So in college, I took a floral design class, and for a while I thought I was going to be a florist. And I took a floral design class, and we were taught how to make a bouquet of roses. And in a bouquet of roses goes baby's breath and fern and roses. And she said one of the biggest mistakes people make when they make a bouquet of roses is they stuff all, you stick the stems in that green foam, you stuff fern all over that green foam so that then you can't see any foam left. Well, the problem with that is that it takes up all your visual poking room. And so she said, when you're making a floral design, that you need to leave visual poking room, meaning you need to actually see the foam so that when it's time to put the roses in, there's space to put them. And so I guess in a way, white space for me is like that. Now, white space is not necessarily white. White space is the area around the negative space, the area around a focal point. I just like it to be white because I routinely make art that just looks like a whole paint store barfed on my work. And so I've learned that I can control it better if I leave white. It's just a signature of mine that I've always had. But this may end up covered all the way at the beginning, or later, but at the beginning I don't start that way. Okay, so on these I'm going to start with a few strokes of paint. One of the things that I will always do for composition help is, if I'm doing something like this, is I will extend the brush strokes to the edge of the substrate, just because that anchors in that paint layer. Now, again, you're going to take a class from a different artist and they're going to contradict all this, and you know who's right? Both of us. That artist is right for her art and I'm right for my art. The reason I extend to edges is that if I just have a brush stroke like this that's very floaty, it's not wrong, but it tells a different story. And I've learned I like my backgrounds to be anchored in, whereas this is providing some visual tension because we're wondering why it's floating. These are not gessoed. These are unprimed tags, okay? And I'm just using acrylic paint and wiping color on to begin with. So if I come back to this, and maybe this is a story you want to tell. Listen, if you can defend it, you can do whatever you can always do whatever you want. Always. All of these rules are just to get you going. And then as you're playing, you need to think, well, what happens if I don't do that? What happens if I roll over it with my office chair? What happens if, X, Y, Z? So, the rules are just a place to start. They're not necessarily a place to end. All right, cool beans. So once I have some sort of background happening, then I have to decide yet again, what is my focal point? What's going to be my emphasis? And so then this is when you get to turn to all of your collage papers, ephemera, bits and bobs, all that crap that we collect that's not crap, that's awesome. So I had this on my floor. I picked it right up off my floor. If you remember this from another demo, it's the hearts I cut out for something. I love the negative shape, so I'm going to use this. So I think that could be a focal point. What do you guys think? Focal. So all collage still is going to have a place you look first. And you, as the artist, you can decide what do I want people to look at first. So I like this. I want people to look at this. So now what I want to do is I want to support this and not detract. So I'm going to ask you a few questions. So I like this pink in combination. This is some hot mess of a tag I did once. Let's see. I'm going to cut this. I'm going to just put this down. Tell me what you think. Okay. Does that work as a collage? And the you know, if you decide this works, guess what? It does. No one else's opinion matter. Oh, by the way, I blocked someone on Instagram today who was really mean to me. People are funny. Does it work? And if it's busy, why is it busy, Ricky? Yeah, why are they competing each other for attention? Rule of threes. Yeah, I did block somebody today. So here's the deal. What relationship do these 4 pieces of collage have to each other? Do they have any relationship at all? They don't. Yeah, they should be touching. Sue, ding, 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 or something. Basically, I've got these random elements. Yeah, and the size is too similar. So the elements are far, far too random. And it just doesn't, you know, your eye pops around from piece to piece, and it's just not focused. It's just not interesting in drawing you in, okay? So that's not going to work. Which brings me to a principle that I have talked about in these demos already, which is proximity. And proximity, it means that when you put something far apart from each other, you have a weak relationship. If you overlap and underlap things, all of a sudden you have a strong relationship, okay? And so this is the strongest relationship of all. But what's the point of that, right? The point is, by overlapping and connecting pieces together, I am going to give them a relationship, and I'm going to and by doing this, we're keeping this as dominant and we're making this subordinate, right? Let me move that down a little bit. Keeping this as dominant and then this as subordinate. And so I think that's okay. Okay. So that works for me. And then I want to keep adding something interesting. One of the things I like to do in my collages is add something that makes no sense whatsoever. So, for example, here's a little square. I just literally picked it up off my dirty, disgusting desk. It looks like a little piece of canvas that I used at one point. I'm just going to staple all these together, you guys. Why glue when you can staple? You know, I like to add something sort of surprising. You know why that's not surprising? I want to add something surprising, but this isn't surprising. And I know why, but do you guys know why? This little square is not surprising. I do care about the rule of thirds, but I'm on this side. I could move it down or up, but since I'm working on such a small substrate, it's going to be fine, kind of smack in the middle there. It's too similar of a color, yeah. So if that were a color that doesn't exist somewhere here, that would make sense. Because it's a similar color, it's going to blend. I can definitely put it there, but it's not going to be my surprising element. I love, love, love stapling collage. This year when I did my my samples for Creativation, I think I stapled most of them. And is that the most supreme laziness of all time? Probably. All right. So I want to continue supporting this focal point without necessarily detracting from it. So now, you know, if this focal point is Brad Pitt, I'm adding the cast of, you know, the supporting cast. And the number one thing that I see people struggle with in class with collage is the collage spread. So remember I mentioned the sticker sneeze from 1995 style scrapbooking, where you just sneezed and wherever your spit hit is where you put a Mrs. Grossman sticker, okay? That happens in collage all the time, where everybody, I call it the spread, everybody spreads out. It's a collage sneeze. And that just becomes really, again, when you spread everything out, it becomes really weak in the relationship. But, you know, maybe you're writing about man's existential crisis, or thinking about man's existential crisis in the universe, and that's what you feel like doing. Well, go for it. But if you don't like it, if you're doing something and you can't seem to identify why it's frustrating to you, chances are it's due to overlap. And if you move things a little closer together, then you will be able, you might like it. You might or you might not. Also, you will like everything you do if you just lower your standards. Don't be so hard on yourselves. You all are like, I demand perfection. What? I am hard on myself in many areas of my life except for art. I give myself a freaking break when it comes to art. I love bad art. I love ugly art. I love it when I make a hot mess. I love it when I make puke on a page. It is the best. So I just don't care. Okay, so how do you feel about that? Sticker sneezes are everywhere. Heck, sometimes I still do sticker sneezes, you guys. You know, you might think, oh, I know all these rules. And then I'm still being like, oh, what did I do there? Holy crap. All right, so I think that works. Let's start another. So this piece of paper, when I flipped it, it flipped over here. So let's use that. A lot of the times when I start creating, I don't necessarily dig and dig and dig for the perfect thing. What I do is I just grab a handful, I put it over here on my right side on the desk, and that's what I use. I don't dig for the perfect thing. The perfect thing is what is nearby and what doesn't interrupt the flow, which is why I also don't ever stop myself to think to myself, self, you should stamp a stamp for this. No, if it's not already stamped, I don't use it. So I'm digging through, here's a beeswax collage that's interesting, sort of. So the rule, all of the composition principles apply. So the rule of thirds, which is, if you divide your piece in thirds, technically, where these lines intersect are called power points, and it's pleasing to the eye to put focal points there, near or touching. Visual triangles are also a rule, meaning if you arrange elements, one element here, one element here, one element here, our eyes will pop from point to point and center on what's in the center. My first book, the book with the yellow cover, is all about collage and color composition and color composition and color. So these are pieces of paintings that I cut up. That looks like a big black boob. Oh my gosh, you guys, I'm losing the farm. I'm losing the nut. So as I put pieces on, if I want to float things off, I can. Just recognizing that that might draw the eye away. These are all kind of abstract collages. They don't necessarily have a representational image. I mean, the heart was representational. Hearts are symbols. So I've really enjoyed lately cutting up all these pieces for... No, you don't really need to match colors. What you need is a contrast to draw the eye, right? I'm going to scroll back on comments here because I think I've missed some. Do you start with what you want the focus to be? Both, Laura. So sometimes I start sometimes I start with the focal, like for this heart one, I'll be like, okay, I love that. I know I want that to be the focal. This one I didn't. This one I just grabbed random elements and then I decide. So it's kind of like which came first, the chicken or the egg? And the answer is yes. There's no have-tos. There's no, you just don't have to do it any certain way. Try it a bunch of different ways, actually. And I don't put limitations on myself. Well, I do in other aspects, but for art, I don't. I think, if this is what I want to do, I do it. If I want to cut this, I cut it. If I want to do only weird focal points today, great. I just do what I feel. Does any store owners online, Renee, do you guys have the tiny attacher staples? Oh, you love this piece, this silhouette piece? This is going to be really hard to watch back on YouTube because I don't think the comments show up on YouTube. All right, I'm going to cut it up. This is a Tim Holtz paper doll. I don't think it needs to go there personally. Also, I don't necessarily finish one before I move on to the next one. That for sure doesn't go there, but it might go here. A couple of you said, I want to see your artistic process and, from start to finish. Well, guys, this is it. I don't finish things. I don't ever think to myself, make a background. Now put a focal point on it. Now do this. I do random pieces throughout. So these might sit until I feel like coming back to them, or never. Michael Deming popped on. I don't know if he left, but he is a freaking rock star with art and collage. So definitely, if you guys aren't aware, I'm sure you are. It's like asking if you don't know who God is. Michael, you're awesome if you're still here. And his wife, Andrea, I took a class from her once and it was so good. I absolutely loved the scroll that I made. I still have it in my studio. I look at the scroll all the time. They are masters of this. So, how many layers should you do? The answer is yes. I like this piece of overdone ripped tag. I'm going to use that. The nice thing about stapling is that you can still tuck things under. I absolutely loathe auditioning for stuff like this. I don't figure it out before I start. I just don't do that. Don't do that. This is gloss spray. It was a piece on, I probably demoed it actually. It was a piece on media board. See how if you take pictures, you, as you go, you can see the different impact each piece has, each edition has. So I have my sewing machine on my desk for times like this. Little stitching. I'd probably call that done personally. All right, there's two. I actually kind of like the big black blob happening here. So you definitely overthink the process, most of you. The other thing that you do is not overlap. I think that's the biggest deal. And all of the rules of art apply. Composition, elements, where elements go, placement. just resist. My biggest tip is resist the spread. Okay, resist the spread. Now, what happens if instead of starting with a painted background, we start with paper? Do you always have to add a quote? I sure don't. Not me. If you want, I mean, if you're kind of coming from scrapbooking and journaling, sometimes we feel like we need to add a quote. Here's the thing though, art is a visual language. And, you know, your visual language can say what you want it to say without necessarily needing to spell it out. It's totally up to you though. I stick them in my journal, Raina. So after I do these, they may end up in my journal as just focal points on pages. So especially when you end up with backgrounds that are like, ooh, these are great in the journal. They're also great on the burlap and the canvas pages. You know, people never know what to do with the burlap. Just staple your tags onto the burlap. It works really, really well. All right, let's keep going. Because some of you don't want to do abstract collages, right? Some of you are going to want to use your stamped images as focal points and things like that. So if I wanted to use a stamped image instead of, you know, this circle or this heart, that's where you put it. Your stamped image just becomes the focal point, right? And then everything else around it needs to support it. And one of the keys to me for collage is limiting the amount of imagery that you put on the piece. The more imagery that you put on the piece, the more the eye has to decode. So by keeping your imagery simple, the eye has an easier time to decode it. When you sew on fabric, or excuse me, on paper, I don't use a special needle. Nor do I use special thread. I tend to like Gutermann thread, but other than that, okay, my husband's in the other room. He is working from home. Let me shut the door. He's probably on a call. Okay, does that make sense? So a stamped image can go anywhere in place of, or in addition to, these abstract elements, okay? But the key is the overlap. The key is the overlap. I just cannot emphasize that enough. All right, let me find the Collage Collective. Tore a bunch of the pages out. I need a handler, you guys. Somebody needs to come in here and save me from myself. All right, Collage Collective. I know, my glues and gesses are awesome. You could tell Ranger you'd like bigger jars. Yeah, you should tell them, because if there's a big demand, they might do it. All right, so instead of starting with a painted background, I'm going to start with a paper background. So if you have a magazine, you're going to cut out cool text, a cool image, tear up old books. I'll have people tell me, you can't tear up books. Dude, there are so many books at the 25-cent, library book sale that, trust me, you can tear up books. And they don't even have to be old books. They just need to be, book paper. And one of the things that I really love about book paper is that it actually counts as a neutral. So if you have a book to rip up and you put it on, it neutralizes things. Okay, so I'm going to come here. So now I've got that as a background. I'm going to look for some elements to make it interesting. Look for textures, look for shapes. So I'll shop the Collage Collective by color and shape, because I very rarely use a piece whole. So I've got a lot of pink happening here. So now I'm looking for something to contrast. And I like these circles. So I'm gonna cut those out. That looks good. So instead of putting the circle here or here or here, I'm going to overlap with what already exists there. Now, if I wanted to do an abstract composition, that could be the star of my show, right? I'm not. I'm going to keep going. One of the things I'll do is that this one doesn't have the black outline on this side anymore because it was overlapped on the printed piece, but it certainly can be sticking off an edge, right? I've only got 2 of those. That's life. Collage is a great thing to do. Bye, Curdy. Collage is a great thing to do when again, you can't bring lots of materials, because you can usually round up stuff to collage. And you could bring already cut out stamped images. That's what Diane does. She sits on planes and, well, she doodles on planes, but she'll also pre-cut all of her images and then bring all of her little bits and bobs in little bags and stuff so that she can make. So I know that green and pink are opposite on the color wheel, and that by adding something green here, I'm going to get an interesting visual pop. You really can glue if you want. If you're using my glues, I would use ultra thick for anything heavier than dictionary weight paper. This stapler is a Tim Holtz tiny attacher. Lots and lots of stores have them. It's just ask for the tiny attacher. If you are a store owner and you can ship that tiny attacher, please pipe up. All right, so let's see what I have to put on as far as stamped images. So what do you think about that one? I know what I think, but let's see what you guys think. Can you stamp directly on it? I wouldn't, because there's so many layers. There's no way you're gonna get a good stamped image stamping through all those different bits of paper. I don't love it on here. You know why? I don't love this image. It's not terrible. I think it's too big. I just think it covers up. It covers up too much. I don't love that. I'm gonna use this bird. He was already glued to something else, so I'm cutting off what he was glued to. I don't love that one either. Can you guys see why? Yeah, it's still pretty big, but the other thing is well, this would be the focal. Yeah, it's the color. The bird's sort of floating, but he is anchored by these pieces that connect to an edge. So I probably wouldn't give him something to stand on, because these pieces connect all the way over here to the far right side. That is a strong anchor, and so I can definitely put him there if I wanted to. But it's the color. I don't think the white circle's distracting, but it could be to you. Yeah, that makes sense. All right, so this is an old stamp set of mine. That's Diane Reevely, and there's me in that picture too. So this was a piece I demoed at a class. We're gonna rip it up. Doesn't she look like the Beatles? Isn't that so cute? She's so stinking adorable. Yeah, the same color detracts from the layers I already have. Well, yeah, looking the wrong. I did explain that about the sight line. He's looking off the page. However, it would really bug me if it was closer. If he's kind of here, it's not too bad. All right, I'm tearing off this one that has the bird on Diane's head. Because I just love my Lady Di. Collage from a different day. So this is what happens to a lot of samples I make in class, is I take them home, because, you know, I end up with like millions of exactly the same composition, because I teach the classes over and over. I don't know why it's making me giggle, but I kind of super love it. So I think that works a bit better. I'm going to move this black line behind her, though. I don't think that works at all. I think it got in the way. I think I need one more black circle. I don't have any more to cut out, so I'm just going to make one. So I cut stuff up because of the sheer quantity that I have of it, you guys. I have so much of it. There's so much, you guys. I mean, I'm swimming in class samples, and oh my gosh, you just don't have any idea. Well, you do a little bit, because I showed you the hot mess that I currently live in. I'm going to pick this one up. I'm going to put this one there. Oop, I'm out of staples. One of the things you need to know about the Tim Holtz Tiny Attacher is don't put more than one staple run in it. There's room for more than one, but it'll jam up if you put more than one. So just put one staple set at a time in there. I've learned that the hard way. And then I heard him say it, and I was like, duh. Takes some of us a while to figure these things out, you know. Some of us are special that way. Dina Weekly Yard Sale. Oh my gosh. Seriously. Okay. I think that works. So these circles make a visual triangle, because when you connect them, what they do is they force your eye actually into the middle. And so from the 3 circles in the visual triangle, we're able to look at the most adorable little Diane, her school photo. Can't you still see her cute grin in that? It's just the best. Okay, let's do one more. I think I'm going to use this. So let's say you do have a focal point that you want that's quite big. What are you going to do to not take away from this? The other thing you're going to work around with this is it's stamped with black ink on tissue, on my collage, plain collage paper tissue. And so it is has semi-transparent. It has a degree of transparency about it, which will affect how well this stands out. So keeping that in mind, I know this is going to be a focal. I want a contrasting color, so I found a piece of yellow from the Collage Collective. It's already sitting right here on my desk. If you could look at my desk right now, it's seriously an avalanche waiting to happen. Just like normal then, right? I've been cutting things, but you can always tear instead of cut. There's a lot of collage artists that don't like a cut line. They think it's really harsh, so they only tear. I obviously don't care, and I will combine torn and cut lines in the same piece. It just doesn't bother me. Remember, if you have low standards, it works out great. It works out great. So this is, like I said before, the piece of tinted media board. It rips once you've torn it off the backing because it's canvas. So it rips along its grain. Nice thing too, if you're working on tags, your stapler will reach. If you're working directly on a page, your stapler doesn't really reach to the middle of the page, right? So that becomes, is it getting blurry? That becomes an issue. Okay, that works for me. So I really would call that one done. I've got my main image, the dark here is drawing the eye down, and then these lead your eye down. So I think pink cheeks on her would be really cute. Maybe I'll take some of that same pink. And this I will glue and not staple. I think that's too small. Fold it in half so you only have to cut it once. Actually, I don't like the cheeks. I think it takes away from it. I think it's good the way it is, maybe some speckle. So after I've done all of these collages, I will lay them all out all over my floor. I'm just looking for the other ones that I did. And then I will speckle them all at one time. And then I will go to Target and buy things I don't need, which I obviously can't do now. So it's good. All right, so I spread them all out and speckle them all at once and let them dry. I'm just gonna speckle with gloss spray. You can speckle with acrylic paint, scribble sticks. I'm using marine because I knew I wanted it to be dark. Notice that I'm speckling, my speckle still has to overlap. I'm speckling on or near the focal point. If you have an area that you don't want to get the pox, you need to just mask it off before you speckle. I never think that far ahead. Did that help demystify collage at all? Did that answer questions? Avoid the spread, I guess, is the #1 tip. Avoid the spread. Any other questions for me? Practice, practice. You guys should make, not that I need to give you homework, but you should make a bunch of little collages and then you should like mail art them to people. Would that be cool? Put them in an envelope and just mail art them. They're just fun little, I mean, these could be a card. There's no reason you couldn't flip it over and write a sentiment on the back. All right, you guys, appreciate y'all. Have a great day.